Hello and welcome to the official YouTube channel of Anastasis Academy. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ananya B. Chatterjee, your VARC mentor. Guys, today I'm thrilled to announce a new series from the stable of Anastasis Academy. We are naming it, we're calling it Maverick Mastery CAT 2024. In this series, we are going to meet every week and practice together some anticipated questions for CAT 2024. In this series, we are going to focus on the correct analysis of the questions, the correct approach, the correct elimination method, how to get to the right answer in lesser time, as less as time as possible. So in episode 1 today, we are going to take up some questions on para jumbles. We would practice some questions together and I would give you some questions for practice. The answer for those practice questions you would get in the description box given below. All right, let us get started without further ado. So para jumbles for episode 1. Let us read the sentences in the parajumble together. We know that after reading the sentences, we have to create a sequence which would make these sentences come together in a form of a coherent paragraph, right? Okay. Sentence A says, good writers use more verbs. Okay. B says, however, it is hard to write without verbs. So one thing is for certain, we are not starting with however. That cannot be the beginning of a sentence or a passage. The reason is that if unnecessary words are reduced, the verb percentage goes up as a mathematical necessity. Now, C is giving the reason for something. That means another sentence must have come before C. Yeah. D is saying so. Use verbs is not really a good advice. So is used as an effect. So also replaces words like therefore, hence, ergo, consequently, so on and so forth, right? So because of however we cannot start with Bombay B, because of the reason we cannot start with C, because of so we cannot start with D. So the one thing that we already know by the process of elimination here is that A is going to open this passage. A will be the starting point. Now we have to create the pair for A. I mean, what will follow A? That is a question. Okay. A is saying good writers use more verbs. So if you read carefully all the remaining sentences, you will see that C is giving the reason behind A. C is giving the reason behind A. So C is giving why good writers use more verbs. Right? The reason is that if unnecessary words are reduced, so when you're saying unnecessary words are reduced, that means you're talking about bringing down the redundant part of some sentence or some text. A good writer knows how to not be redundant. A good writer would want to reduce unnecessary words, right? So the reason is that if unnecessary words are reduced, which a good writer would do, the verb percentage goes up as a mathematical necessity, right? The verb percentage goes up directly corresponds to the usage of more verbs. If you can see the connection here. Yes. So A, C would come together clearly. Good writers use more verbs. The reason is that if unnecessary words are reduced, the verb percentage goes up as a mathematical necessity. Now is your turn to introduce the word however. right? However, because you're showing the contrast. Why, however? Because the verb percentage is going up as a necessity, but it is hard to write without verbs. You might think that why do we have so many verbs? It's going up. It is a cause of concern. It is a cause of worry. The verb percentage is going up. However, it is hard to write without verbs. However, connects C and B. है ना? So, because again, B is the conclusion, D is the conclusion for B. It is connecting with so. So, use verbs is not really a good advice. Writers have to use verbs, and trying to add extra ones would not turn out well. So the author is concluding by saying that when you're trying to deliberately use more verbs, it is not really a very good idea, because anyway, writers have to use verbs. It is a mathematical necessity if they want to reduce unnecessary words, as has been stated in C, right? It is hard to write without verbs, as has been stated in B. So use verbs it's not a good advice. It's like breathe more, something like that. Yeah, a person is living, he will breathe. And unless you're talking about some guided breathing techniques or whatever, it's redundant to say all that. So writers have to use verbs, and trying to add extra ones would not turn out that well. Okay. So the correct transition would be A, C, B, D. So this is a practice, this is a guided practice session. So guys, after this question, I am going to pause for a bit so that you can also pause the video and attempt the question before you resume the play button, and you listen to the explanation. Okay. We are moving to the second question for the day. Okay. So I would start reading the sentences now. Let us try to understand the meanings of these sentences first. The French Revolution created a vision for a new moral universe. So, when you say moral, first of all, it has to do with the distinguishing feature between right and wrong, basically. What should be done, what should not be done, like that. The French Revolution created a vision for a new moral universe, that sovereignty resides in nation. That sovereignty is autonomy, you know, the idea of self rule. That sovereignty resides in nations, that a constitution and the rule of law governs politics, that politics is not the ultimate supremacy in a system, that even politics should be under the purview of constitution and the rule of law. ऐसा नहीं है कि नेताओं के पास सारा जो है पावर है and politicians are the ultimate power holders. That people are equal and enjoy inalienable rights. What do you mean by inalienable rights? Inalienable का मतलब होता है कि the kind of rights that cannot be taken away from you. So if you are a person, if you are an individual, and if you have some inalienable rights, that means your being, and those rights cannot be separated because somebody else thought so. You understand? Nobody can take away those rights from you. Part of who you are, those rights. Right? That people are equal and enjoy inalienable rights, and that church and state should be separate. That religious benefactors of societal norms should be completely different from the administrative body of that place. Right? Religion and administration should not hobnob or rub shoulders with one another. So, a couple of things that French Revolution did was establishing the sovereignty of nations, uh, putting the law or the rule of law and constitution over politics, establishing that people are equals and they have some inalienable rights, you know, and that church and state should be completely different entities altogether. That's A. Okay. B says the French Revolution invented modern revolution. That means there have been revolutions in the past which were not so modern, maybe. The idea that humans can transform the world according to a plan, and so has a central place in the study of social sciences. That humans are able to recreate the environment that they live in according to a plan, right? And hence the French Revolution has a very important place in the study of social sciences, right? So I can actually have some authority or some business in changing the way the world around me works. That was kind of established by this modern revolution, also known as French Revolution. C says it ushered in modernity by destroying the foundations of the old regime, right? It destroyed some existing established institutions of ideals and beliefs and socioeconomic systems. What were these? Ushered in means welcomed in. You know? Ushered. Allow me to mark this for you. Back in the day, when there used to be theaters and all, and there used to be big ballroom parties in the West or, you know, Europe. So there would be some boys who were given the task of welcoming the people who were coming and alighting from their carriages and cars, and there would be a red carpet, and their work would just be ay, 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 welcome, welcome. So those people were called ushers. Even now you have ushers, but at the same time, yeah. So it ushered in modernity by destroying the foundations of the old regime, absolutist politics. Absolutist politics is absolute is what? You can't make any changes in it. Absolute, ultimate. Absolutist politics is, well, if I am left, I am so extremely leftist. If I'm right, I'm so extremely rightist. So if you don't believe in all the 100 things that I'm saying, then you are not a good addition to the party, or not a good follower, or not a good disciple, whatever. Absolutist. It's not like you believe in 10 things that I say and one thing that I say you don't believe in, right? Legal inequality, different rights being enjoyed by different classes of people. A feudal economy, feudalism is the English for zamindari pratha, by the way, characterized by guilds. There used to be, groups of people who were very powerful, landowners. Manorialism is a way of, land owning system. Manors, there used to be. And even serfdom, slavery, right? So these were their cult of elitist people, and landowners becoming the center of economic activity in every community, and then slavery. These were the characteristic features of the old regime: absolutist politics, legal inequality, feudal economy, and these things. And an alliance of church and state. So in the old regime, church and state, they worked hand in hand, which was challenged in sentence A, which was challenged by the French Revolution clearly. B says that vision, some kind of vision, that vision, that is a pronoun. Pronouns always replace nouns. So it has to come after a sentence, right? That vision is enshrined. Enshrined as in encompassed. absorbed. Enshrined in the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen of 1789, whose proclamation of natural imprescriptible as in a doctor gives us prescriptions, but there are things that nobody else can give you. You're born with them, right? So imprescriptible and inalienable rights, the rights that nobody else can give you and the rights that nobody else can take away from you. These are natural rights that you are born with as a human being. So, whose proclamation of natural, imprescriptible, and inalienable rights served as the model for the 1948 United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That was the basis of 1948. See, almost like 2 centuries later, 1.5 centuries later, it became the basis. It was so ahead of its time, became the basis for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the UN. So let's start. First thing first, we know that we can't start with it because it is a pronoun. We cannot start with that because that is a pronoun. Now you have to choose between A and B. Both are seeming like opening sentences, but there is the trick. What is the trick? One of them is more generalized. Another one is telling us more about what it did. So we were going to start on a very general platform. B would be a better opening line. Why, you know? B would be the starting point or the intro, because it is talking about what French Revolution invented, number one, and what is its place in social sciences in general. Right? But now you might be thinking that then why not put A after B? A also is kind of talking about what it did, you know. The French Revolution invented blah, blah, blah. And why not the French Revolution created a vision, blah, blah, blah. The only problem is because you have used the word modern revolution, you have more data as a continuation of this thought in it ushered in modernity by how it was a modern revolution has been talked about in C. By doing what? By destroying the foundations of the old regime and blah, blah, blah. So on and so forth. Right? Now, because you are talking about these things, an alliance of, can you see, an alliance of church and state? So you go to A, which gives you the contrast between the old regime, which practiced the alliance between the church and the state, and the new regime, which kind of talks about the church and state being separate as an effect of the French Revolution, as I hope you can see it here. Now, you talked about a vision in A. So C to A, church and state together, church and state separate. Now A to D, that created a vision, and then that vision in D. That vision that was, you know, that was kind of came into picture after the French Revolution. That became the basis of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 by the United Nations. That vision. Chronologically, also D has to come at the end because it's talking about 1948 and not French Revolution that happened in 1700s. Chronologically, also, ideally, we should end with D. Yeah? Okay. So the correct answer will be B to C, C to A, and A to D. That's the transition game here. Let's move to the next question. You may pause and attempt the question on your own before you can resume watching the video with me. Okay, so we are at the third question. This is a fairly easy question, easy transitions. Uh, Let us read the sentences. During the 24-hour darkness of the austral, okay, the word austral, one second. The word austral means related to southern hemisphere. Related to southern hemisphere. Start again, okay? During the 24-hour darkness of the austral autumn and winter, the South Pole telescope operates non-stop under impeccable conditions for astronomy. So the word impeccable, it means perfect or near perfect. Yes, ideal, perfect. So Ritik Roshan has an impeccable sense of style, like this. है ना? Ritik Roshan has an impeccable sense of style. ऐसा बोल सकते हैं. So okay. तो क्या समझ आया? That 24-hour darkness जो southern hemisphere में autumn and winter के बीच में होता है. South Pole telescope has most impeccable conditions possible for astronomy, astronomical studies or whatever research. The atmosphere is thin, stable, due to the absence of the heating and cooling effects of a rising and setting sun. And the pole has some of the calmest winds on earth, blowing almost always from the same direction. Okay. The South Pole has the harshest environment on earth, but also the most benign, says William Holzapfel, a University of California at Berkeley astrophysicist, the on site lead researcher at the South Pole Telescope. Okay. From the astronomer's perspective, so he is saying, this person, Mr. William H., he is saying what? He's saying that the environment may be harsh, but it is also very benign. Benign means, okay, so the root word ben comes from love, benevolent, beneficiary, love and support. Benign is harmless. From an astronomer's perspective, not until the sun goes down and stays down, March through September, does the South Pole get benign. So we have this again. See, now there are a couple of things that are important to understand. I'm not going to start with A because A is sounding like a continuation of a thought during the 24-hour darkness of. Not my best choice, as in not. I have better choices here. B is also, it's like there is no, something has to precede B before you introduce the atmosphere and you're saying the pole. Which pole? You have to introduce the South Pole first, and then you say the pole. Doesn't make sense if we start with. Um, so between C and D, C feels more like an opening sentence because it's starting with a comment made by a certain gentleman who claims that we're starting with C, claims that South Pole has the harshest environment on Earth, but also the most benign. And the immediate continuation would be D, because first of all, Mr. William H. said that harsh but benign. And when is it benign? Right? Not until the sun goes down and stays down. So there is a duration for the South Pole to remain benign, which is from March to September. Again, this duration has been talked about in A, austral autumn and winter. During the 24-hour darkness of the austral autumn and winter, the South Pole telescope operates non-stop under near perfect conditions for astronomy. Now that you have introduced the near perfect conditions for astronomy, you are elaborating on what those conditions are in B. The atmosphere is thin, it is stable, The pole has some calm winds blowing almost always from the same direction. So, more about the impeccable conditions for astronomy to happen during the period of March to September, which is also known as the austral autumn and winter season. So, the transition would be from C to D, D to A, and then A to B, right? C, D, A, B. So, that's that. Let's move to the next question. You may pause and attempt it first. All right, let us read the sentences. As operating systems, Latin and French outlived the strategic preeminence of Rome and France. So clearly, the kind of longevity the Latin and French operating systems had, or they have, it kind of trumped the preeminence and a very promising beginning of the Rome and the France related operating systems, right? Nor will Chinese, Russian, or Indian culture soon shoulder aside the American version, high or low, whose draw is embodied by Harvard and Hollywood. So, nor is giving us an idea that something has to come before this. It cannot be the opening line, it is already understood because you can't start with nor. Something has to come before this, right? So it is saying that you can't compare the cultures of Russia or China or India aside America as better or lesser, because kind of attraction that draw here is not the game wala draw. Draw is the attraction. The kind of attraction the American culture has, you can see everybody wants to go to Harvard and everybody wants to watch Hollywood movies. Right. Can't really compare the kind of impact it has on global culture, the American culture. That's the author is saying this. Once a standard exists, it tends to perpetuate. Perpetuate as in go on and on. Perpetuate means to go on and on. A notion that perpetuates, a belief that perpetuates, a law. Once a standard exists, tends to perpetuate itself, just like the dollar. For all its ups and downs, will not soon yield to euro or renminbi. Renminbi, I think it's another word for the Chinese currency, yen, could be. By such measure, again, I'm not going to start with by such measure. What measure? So B and D cannot be the opening sentences. Done deal. No other rival, not even China, comes close to America, whatever the country's many familiar feelings and riches of the rising rest. Um, hmm. So, what does it mean? Whatever the country's many familiar failings and riches of the rising rest. So, the country may have failed and it is familiar to the whole world in many aspects. Uh, Many other countries have shown a lot of promise also, but it doesn't compare. So, entirety of the passage, if you had to put a main idea to it, it's talking about how establishing standards or systems. I'm going to underline these words. How establishing standards or systems kind of ensures your longevity as a power position in spite of other countries or cultures. And as a country who established these things, be it dollar, be it Harvard, be it Hollywood, since you're setting the standards, it kind of your position is somewhere there up above the rest, right? No matter if you're failing now in many ways. Yeah. So okay, so introduce the passage first with C. Once a standard exists, it tends to perpetuate itself just like the dollar. For all its ups and downs will not soon yield to. Yield to as in haar jana, be defeated. Buy. तो ऐसा नहीं है, the euro and renminbi are going to soon defeat dollar, right? Because it's a standard, right? So you'll start with C, you're introducing the concept of standard setting and how it gives you an extra edge. C. And then it makes sense that you connect B, because you've talked about dollar. Now you're not going to talk about Harvard and Hollywood because those are the standards in cinema, in academia. So nor will the Chinese, Russian, or Indian culture soon shoulder aside the American version of high or low whose draw is embodied by Harvard or Hollywood. Then you go for another example as operating systems, because they established Latin and French outlived the strategic. Latin and French. Possibly we're talking about numbers here. So Latin and French outlived the strategic preeminence of Rome and France. So more than the geography, what became more important was the system in place. You know, the Roman Empire fell, the French lost their whatever, but still the operating system is Latin or French. So CBA is a mandatory triplet establishing the beauty and the power of putting systems and putting standards in place. And then D, by such measures, no other rival, not even China, comes close to America, whatever the country's many familiar feelings and riches of the rising rest. So talked about all this. CBD would have been best, but there is no other place to put A because it is in the same uh, tone and theme as C and B. So yeah. So that's that. Let's move to another question. You can pause and attempt it. So far, this is the easiest question that you have seen. The oldest fossil grasses are just 70 million years old, although grass may have evolved a bit earlier than that. There have been land plants for 465 million years, yet there were no flowers for over two-thirds of that time. The equally familiar grasses appeared even more recently. Even more recently is a beautiful hint. Even more recently as compared to what? Flowering plants only appeared in the middle of the dinosaur era. So B and D are together because you're talking about flowers not being there, and then flowers which appeared in the middle of the dinosaur era, right? So earlier there were no flowering plants. Flowers appeared in the middle of the dinosaur era. And then you do the comparison. The equally familiar grasses appeared even more recently. Yes. How recently? The oldest fossil grasses are just 70 million years old. BD. See. Well, this was a fairly doable one, right? Okay. So we discussed the correct way of approaching parajumble questions. In CAT, they are very, very important. So I'm giving you 5 questions for practice. You can give me the answers in the comments section, and you will get the correct answers in the description box. So this first practice question that I would like you to try is based on identity politics. You can pause and take a look at the question. The second one is nice, actually. It's based on Indian village culture and polity. There would just be one confusion that you would have, but good question. It will help you uh, create the right thought process. The third question is on the Cold War. Again, a very good question, but easy. You'll get the transitions very easily. The fourth question is the mandate of heaven. Okay. Talks about the rights of kings and all. And finally, the fifth question is about General Yi and his coup, military coup. So I would expect all of you to try these questions and tell me the answers in the comment section. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What did you think? Those of you who are in doubt, so as to, if you're going to get options in CAT, going by the previous year's trends, no, you will not get options. You will have to come to the correct sequence yourself. Okay. I'm going to meet you in the next class with another set of practice questions. And till then, happy learning. Take good care of yourselves. Thank you.